Today marks 1 year since Hamas launched attacks in Israel, killing more than 1,200 people and kidnapping more than 250 others. One of those kidnapped is Aviva Siegel, who was taken from her home and held hostage through tunnels underneath Gaza. She was released during a brief ceasefire last November, but her husband was not. He remains in captivity, and she advocates for the release of him and others still being held by Hamas. Aviva joins us now from Israel to talk about that day 1 year ago and how you're advocating for the release of so many other hostages. Aviva, I so appreciate your time and joining us today. And I know it's difficult to go through, but help us understand that night on October 7th when you and your husband were abducted.
It was a shock, a complete and utterly shock. When I got to Gaza, I was in a complete and utterly shock, didn't understand what am I doing there with my pajamas, with my husband. I'm 63 years old, Keith is 65 years old, and it was just beyond.
And we know Keith is from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. He's an Israeli American. And that night, you were both abused. He was shot at, and you've spoken about some of these tunnels being lit, some of these tunnels being in complete darkness, about not being able to eat. Before you were released, what were some of the most fearful moments you experienced?
There were many moments, and every moment was worse than the other. Many, many moments. The moment in the tunnel where it was dark, we didn't have any air, and I was sure that we're going to die. We just lay down on a filthy, dirty mattress and figured out how to collect the little bit air that was in that little tunnel, a very small place, a little arch that's open. And we just lay down. We couldn't even pick our head up or talk or do anything. And Keith looked at me and said that he feels that he can't breathe. And I said to him, Keith, just lie down and try and figure out how to breathe. And you get the feeling that you're going to die in a second and what it's going to be like. So I touched death underneath the ground in Gaza. And that was one of the moments that scared me terribly. And I just prayed that I would die before Keith. There were lots of moments when they tortured us, when they moved us one of the times and they put black material on our eyes that we won't be able to see anything. And I had to find out where to put my next step while holding the wall. And I thought that I'm going to fall, and I thought that they're going to kill me. I didn't know what they're doing to me. I didn't know where Keith is, and that was very, very frightening too. And when they took us, of course, to Gaza, with a knife in front of my face and a gun in front of Keith and my face, it was just beyond. And for me, the most terrible moments were when they tortured the girls and touched them. And when they tortured Keith, that was the hardest moments for me to just keep quiet and shut up while I wanted to scream. I wanted to scream for them. I wanted to cry for them. I wasn't allowed to cry. I wasn't allowed to move. One of the times I did hug one of the girls because I just felt like she was my daughter. And to see her shaking like she did broke my heart. And after giving her a hug, I got screamed at. And then after a couple of hours, she told us that he touched her. And seeing Keith, after they took him and shaved all his body and told him that he needs to shave his intimate place while he wanted to cry and scream, and I wanted to cry with him, they just stood in front of us and started laughing.
It sounds like such horror and humiliation. And I know that you were held captive 51 days. You were moved some 13 times. I just cannot fathom what it has been like for you to experience. What's the narrative inside your own head when you want to scream, but you know you wouldn't be safe if you said anything?
We had to do that. We weren't allowed to open our mouths. We had to keep quiet. So we weren't allowed to move. We weren't allowed to stand. We weren't allowed to hug. The only thing we could do is look at each other in the eyes and give a little bit of love. And that's what I did. After seeing one of the girls being beaten up into pieces and threatened with a gun in her face, she was red. And you could see the marks all over her body. And I so much wanted to get up and just give her a hug. But all I did is looked at her in the eyes. And that way I told her that I'm with her. And it broke my heart.
You were
And after a
released.
couple of
You were released miraculously during what has been the only ceasefire and hostage exchange last November. The US government, all interested parties are trying to get to another ceasefire again, but yet conflict in the region has escalated. Ballistic missiles from Iran have come into your country now, Israel. What do you want from governments in control of what will happen next? Are you advocating for Prime Minister Netanyahu to reach a ceasefire, or what is the outcome you want to see right now?
I just want to tell everybody that I'm so worried about Keith, and I'm so worried about the hostages. They're there lying on a filthy, dirty mattress on the floor like a rug with no human rights. And for a year to just lie down and keep quiet without moving your body and being starved, just like I was. You know, the 6 hostages that came back a month ago, and one of them is Hirsch, in bad conditions. They lost half of their body weight, and you could see that they were just in terrible conditions. And to think about Keith and the girls, I want Bibi Netanyahu and the whole world to understand that killing is not right, and starving and what they're doing and leaving the hostages in Gaza is the most cruelest thing in earth. I was there. I know exactly what it feels. And it just is the cruelest thing to leave Keith and the hostages there to die slowly. I just hope that Keith is strong enough and he's keeping his hope. And we're waiting for him. And all the families here are waiting for their loved ones.
Well, we know that it's important to hear perspective from people who have been held hostage, and you are advocating for those who are still being held against their will. Before we let you go, I know that there was a phrase that you said to Keith the last time you saw him, just on the chance that he might see this now. Remind us what that phrase is and what you would say to him now.
I said to Keith, you be strong for me, and I'll be strong for you. And I'm so happy that I did say that, because I'm sure that it's keeping Keith going, and it's keeping me going, and I'm doing everything I can to bring him back. I would just love to go into Gaza and find him, but I can't.
But you can advocate and use your voice, and our hopes are that all those being held hostage know that you and others are fighting for their release. Aviva Siegel, thank you so much.
I just want to tell you one more thing. The hostages there are lying on a filthy, dirty mattress underneath the ground with no oxygen, and they're screaming for help. And they think also all the time, who's going to be the next one that's going to be raped or touched or starved or tortured? And I think that they've had enough. We need to get them all out. So thank you so much for having me.
Aviva Siegel, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.